today's lesson, I want to take you through the journey of one of my beginner students who added 20 yards to his 7-iron in just 10 minutes in his lesson that he had 2 days ago. So if you're a person who needs some help striking the irons, you feel like you could gain more distance, and I think we'll all accept that we would happily take an extra 20 yards with our irons. If you're thinking maybe you're somebody who wants to compress the ball better because you don't feel like you compress the ball, this lesson's really going to help you out, because we've got some drills and some movements and some understanding that really help Dan along the way, and he is swinging better than ever. And let's talk a little bit about what Dan has been working on. So like I say, beginner golfer, just learning how to swing the golf club, but there's always been a tendency for him to lean back coming into impact. And I know some people might not necessarily lean back as far as this, but we have had times in the past where Dan's lifted that left heel, and the subconscious feeling, and he's kind of said it himself, that he thinks he's trying to lift that golf ball up in the air. So he would often sort of thin it, top it, or catch it a bit heavy. And if you just think about the amount of power that you lose when you do that as well, if I was to just pick a golf ball up and try and throw it as far as I can, but as I throw, I lean away from the target, that's not going to go as far as if I transfer my weight to the left, and that goes much, much further. So if we were to make any action, whether we were sort of hitting a tennis ball, whether we were throwing something, generally we transition into our lead side, we transfer that weight, we have a sequence of movement which generally starts from the ground up. So I would like to see transfer of weight before the hips start to turn, before the upper body starts to turn, and finally a release. And the golf swing is no different to that, really. So we sort of said, Dan, what can we come up with that's going to help you strike the ball better, that's going to give you a real exaggerated feeling? And that's where what I call the step drill comes in. And it's kind of a mini version of a Happy Gilmore swing. It's going to require us to be able to step into the golf shot, have a little bit of fun with it, add some power, and so on. So let's just take a look in the video of Dan's lesson and just have a look at some of the changes he made. And what we see here with Dan as we look through his swing is, okay, there's a slight change in setup on the bottom image, which is from his lesson just 2 days ago. And at the top is a lesson from a couple of weeks ago. So we have made the setup a little bit better, meaning that the spine angle is just slightly tilted backwards, and that his weight is a little bit more evenly distributed and his feet are in the right place. But when we go from there, I've drawn this red line down by his left foot, and I like to call that the kind of power wall, because I like to see people move towards that red line, towards the wall. But what we see on the top image as I just play through this is Dan kind of moves away from that wall, which is fine. We're going to create some sort of gap there. Maybe that's a little bit too much, but we will create some sort of gap. But then as he starts to swing through, he stays well away from that wall, doesn't quite get there. We start to see that left arm buckle and the hands not release, and we end up with a very narrow width. His hands very, very close to him indeed. And what we've tried to get him to do instead is now this step drill. So at the bottom, what we see is as Dan is now set up, he's then bringing both feet together, all right? And then from there, what we asked him to do, we just put a little purple block out in front of his left foot, which was there to make sure he didn't step too far. Because what I see a lot of the time when people are doing this drill is they'll have the feet together, they'll make a backswing, and instead of stepping into where their feet were originally, what they'll do instead is they'll take this big step forward, and that's not going to create the movement we want. So that's why I put that purple yoga blocker there. And what we now see is him just test things out a little bit, just get his range, and then from there he starts to make that backswing, and look how early he steps. Now what we don't want to see is him get all the way to the top of the swing and step as the golf club is coming down, because we want to see that weight transfer as the club is still moving back, getting ready to push into our power wall. Whereas what I will see a lot of the time is people will swing up, and then as they start pulling the club down, that's when they will also step, and that's not going to give us the sequence that we desire. And then if we just take a look at his relationship now with that power wall that we're calling it, we step into it, the hips then start to slide over to the left. We'd still like these to reach that wall a little bit more, but it's a work in progress. And then from there now, he can turn through properly, create a tiny bit more width, but again, it's getting better. And he's still got that element of leaning back, but he's moved into the golf ball. And during this lesson, he went from hitting a 7-iron 115 yards to 135 yards. So he gains 20 yards just on a 7-iron just by stepping into the ball. So as we've just seen there, Dan made some really good progress in the right direction. He's still not 100% of the way there. We're still seeing him finish with a little bit of a sort of bent knee instead of straightening that up and turning all the way through to impact. But I'm sure over the next few weeks when he practices, that's only going to improve. But let's talk to you now about how you can set this drill up and just a little bit more of the specifics of what I want you to do to make sure it works. So we've got a couple of things here. I've got just a basket. You can use anything that you can get an alignment stick in. And I'm just setting this alignment stick up just outside of my left hip. Okay, so just sort of 2 or 3 inches outside the left hip. And I've got a block here, just a yoga block, which is going to help me, as I mentioned in the previous video where we were analysing Dan's swing, it's going to help me just step into the right place rather than overstepping like this, because we don't want to start creating what we call a slide through impact. We don't necessarily want to see that. So just having something just as a visual on that left foot, and then a stick just on the left hip. And generally what we should see in the golf swing is when we rotate away, we'll create something we call a sway gap. We'll create a little bit of space here, which is exactly what we want to create. That's different than swaying over to the right too far, but we will see a little bit of space open up. Okay, and what we want to start to do then is shift into that left side, closing that gap. And you see now my hip starts to get very close and just gently touch that alignment stick that I've got there, which then allows me to use the weight in this left side to turn and rotate through. So we set ourselves up, we make a small sway gap on the left, we shift into that space, and we turn out. And that's kind of how we want a swing to look, and that's what I've sort of challenged Dan with, to make sure over time he can start to move into this and turn through instead of buckling that knee, or even worse, hanging back away from it. We don't want to be hanging back. So let's go to that step drill. Let me give you an idea on how we're going to do things. And like I said, the specifics of it, because what I generally see, and if you're somebody who struggles with sequence and you struggle to get the weight shifted in time and you struggle to get everything moving at the right time, what I see so often is people set up, and I want you to set up to the golf ball first, because that ensures your feet are in the right place. I don't want people kind of standing back here and doing an actual Happy Gilmore and stepping into the ball. I want you to get into your setup, bring that left foot over then near your right, and you can just let your golf club kind of hover here. You don't want to keep it sort of down at the golf ball. You can just keep that up here. And then as you swing back, I want you to start stepping. Now this is the big mistake I see from most people, is they will start to swing back, they will get to the top of the swing with both feet together, they will start to swing down, and now they'll start to step. And that is the perfect example of a bad sequence, because that would in your golf swing mean you get to the top of your swing, pull your arms down, which we said before should be the last part of the release in the sequence, and as you pull your arms down, everything then kind of spins out and we end up leaning back away from the target naturally. So we want to be stepping quite early. We're gonna set up. I'll move that ball out the way for the time being. We're then going to bring that left foot over to the right. We're going to let the golf club just hover, and when our golf club kind of gets parallel to the ground, that's when we're going to start to step with this left side. So setting up, step early, and then turn through. And you see there how I'm moving over, I'm creating this straight line down. My left leg, left hip is just touching this stick, and I've stepped just before the purple yoga block. I haven't gone and stepped into it and slid too far, and I haven't kind of stayed back and spun away. And once you feel like you've done that a couple of times and you're comfortable with it, it's great fun to hit some shots, and you'll be amazed because we are getting that weight transferred across. So you'll be amazed at how much better you strike the ball, because you'll get this slightly steeper angle of attack, so you can compress the ball, that word that we've all heard. You will get some nice spin on the golf ball. And where a lot of the distance comes from is not only striking the middle of the face, which you are more likely to do when you transfer that weight and descend onto the golf ball, but you're also slightly de-lofting the golf club, so you get that lower launch and the golf ball goes much further. So let's have a go. Let's see how we get on with that. We've got this stick just outside the left hip. We set up as if we're going to hit a normal golf shot. Bring our left foot over, and then we're going to make a backswing and step in. And there, that's a very good strike. And distance-wise, it's gone probably 175 with a 7-iron. So good strike, good distance. We are happy with the outcome. And the most important thing is I struck it really nicely. Notice when we look back at that swing how I finish up on this left side. I basically felt a tiny glance of that stick. I didn't bash through it. I didn't knock it over. I just felt a little glance and I turned around from there. That left hip rotated out of the swing. I don't think that drill does anybody any harm. It doesn't matter what level player you are, whether you're playing off a scratch handicap, whether you're playing off 5, that does not do any damage at all to your swing. It can only benefit you in terms of rehearsing that transition. It's a little bit of fun, it's quite dynamic, it's great stepping into the golf ball. We can be a bit more free instead of sometimes with a golf swing, we can feel a little bit rigid, like we can't move too much. And I want you to feel that way transitioning from left to right and left to right again, making sure that you get that speed, making sure you get the sequence, and making sure you have an efficient golf swing to strike the ball as far as possible. If you think you found that lesson beneficial and that's going to help you strike your irons better and hit the ball further, then please do like and subscribe to the channel, which is going to give you more tips going forwards. And if, like Dan, you want to come and see me in person for a lesson at Trafford Golf Centre, then there is a link below that will send you to the right place to get in touch. So thanks for watching this week's golf lesson, and I will see you in the next one.